My daughter-in-law and her family had already finished their anniversary dinner when I arrived. She smiled and said, "Oh, you're late. You're getting the check, right?" "Haha," my son laughed. "You're as scatterbrained as ever. How did you manage to be late?" That was the moment I realized they had invited me for exactly the time the dinner was ending. I called the manager over, and suddenly, their faces went pale. The air conditioning of the Imperial Garden restaurant hit my face as I walked through the glass doors. It was exactly 8:30 p.m. I was on time, just as I have been for all 68 years of my life. I was carrying my brown leather handbag, the one Arthur gave me 20 years ago, and a burgundy cardigan that made me feel elegant without being flashy. I saw the table in the back, huge, full of people, and completely empty of food. Only dirty plates, half-finished glasses of wine, crumpled napkins. The smell of butter and garlic still lingered in the air, mocking me. My daughter-in-law, Harper, was the first to spot me. She was wearing a tight black dress, her hair freshly styled in perfect waves. She looked at me with those green eyes that I once thought were pretty and smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just won something. "Oh, you're late," she said with a light, almost musical laugh. "You're getting the check, right?" "Haha." Her sister, Chloe, let out a loud cackle. My son, Liam, my only child, the one I raised alone after cancer took his father, didn't even get up to greet me. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, looking at me like I was an inconvenience. "You're as scatterbrained as ever, Mom," he said in that tone he had learned from Harper. That tone that mixed mockery with pity. "How did you manage to be late?" The words hit my stomach like rocks. I pulled out my cell phone. I checked Harper's text message. There it was. "Hey Mom, anniversary dinner, 8:30 p.m. at the Imperial Garden. Don't miss it." I looked at the restaurant's wall clock. The hands showed 8:32 p.m. I wasn't late. I had arrived exactly when they told me to. And then I understood it, like a lightning bolt illuminating everything in the dark. They had invited me on purpose for when the dinner was over, so I would pay the bill for a meal I never shared. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. Everyone was at the table. Harper, Chloe, Harper's mother Barbara with her fake pearl necklace, Harper's cousin, her aunt, and 3 other people I didn't even know. 9 people in total, all laughing, all looking at me like I was the punchline of the night. The waiter approached with a tray. On top was a bill folded inside a small black leather booklet. "The check, ma'am," he said in a professional voice. I opened it. My hands were trembling slightly. $875. $875 for a dinner I didn't eat. Moet champagne, lobster, goat cheese and fig appetizers, raspberry soufflés. Everything was the most expensive item on the menu. Harper was watching me with that smile. Liam avoided my eyes. The others waited. Something inside me, something that had been asleep for 3 years, began to wake up. I closed the bill. I took a deep breath, and instead of taking out my wallet as I would have done before, as I had done dozens of times, I raised my hand and signaled the manager. "Mark Anthony," I said with a firm voice. "Could you come over for a moment?" I saw Harper's smile waver. Just for a second, but I saw it. Mark Anthony approached in his impeccable suit and that burgundy tie he always wore. He's the son of Mary, my old co-worker from the accounting firm, a serious, professional man, and someone I trusted absolutely. "Mrs. Vance," he said, bowing his head with genuine respect. "Good evening. Mark, what time was the reservation made for this table?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. He didn't hesitate for a second. "At 6 o'clock sharp, ma'am." They arrived promptly at that time. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Harper stopped smiling. Liam straightened up in his chair. Chloe looked at her sister with wide eyes. "And what time was I told to be here?" I asked loudly, so everyone could hear. "At 8:30 p.m., as I understand it," Mark replied. "Exactly," I said. My voice sounded stronger than it had in years. Then Mark added something I knew he would say, something we had planned a week ago when I told him my situation. "Mrs. Vance, your permanent VIP table has been ready since 6. We were expecting you." I watched the color drain from Harper's face. Permanent table? She stammered. Of course, Mark said with total naturalness. Mrs. Vance is a silent partner in this restaurant. She has held 15% of the shares for 10 years. And right there, in that moment, as their faces turned as pale as wax, I knew everything was about to change. But what they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. If you want to know how I got to that moment, how I went from being the scatterbrained mother-in-law to the woman who taught them the hardest lesson of their lives, subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Because they never saw what was coming. Let me tell you who I really am. Because for 3 years, I let myself be called scatterbrained Eleanor, the old-fashioned mother-in-law, the generous little old lady. But that was never me. My name is Eleanor Grace Vance. I am 68 years old, and every wrinkle on my face tells a story of work, struggle, and victories that no one handed to me. When I was 25, Arthur and I got married in a small chapel in Brooklyn. He was a civil engineer. I had just finished my degree as a certified public accountant. We moved into a 2-room apartment that we paid for together, with furniture we bought second-hand at flea markets. Liam was born 2 years later. It was the best day of my life. I worked through my entire pregnancy. I went back to the office when he was 3 months old, not because I wanted to, but because we needed to. Arthur earned a good living, but we wanted to give our son a future better than ours. And we did. For 40 years, I worked at Miller & Associates, a prestigious accounting firm downtown. I started as an assistant. I finished as a senior accountant with a salary many men envied. I managed the accounts of major corporations. I was never late. I never made a serious mistake. I earned every dollar that entered my bank account. When Liam was 14, Arthur started having stomach pains. We thought it was gastritis. It was pancreatic cancer. They gave him 6 months to live. He lasted 8, fighting every day. I paid for everything. The treatments, the doctors, the experimental drugs that promised miracles. I drained our savings. I took out loans. I sold my car. But Arthur didn't survive. I was left a widow at 56, alone with a son in college and a debt of $35,000. Do you know what I did? I didn't crumble. I didn't give up. I worked double shifts. I took consulting jobs on weekends. I invested in 2 commercial retail spaces Arthur had left half paid. I finished paying them off in 4 years. Today, those spaces bring me $2,500 a month in rent. I paid for Liam's entire university education, med school, 6 years. Every tuition bill, every book, every piece of equipment. He never lacked for anything. I bought my house. Yes, my house. The 3-story one in a nice suburb of Connecticut with a garden full of wisteria and a view of the park. I paid for it with my money. With 40 years of waking up at 5 in the morning, of bringing lunch in Tupperware to save money, of not buying new clothes for years, of not going on vacation. That house is valued at $1.8 million according to the last appraisal. I have savings. $200,000, maybe $300,000 distributed in investments that generate returns. Money no one knows I have. Because I learned that when a woman has resources, everyone wants a piece. Arthur taught me something before he died. He told me in the hospital, 3 days before he closed his eyes forever. Ellie, don't confuse generosity with foolishness. Help, but don't empty yourself out. I didn't understand his words until 3 years ago, when Harper entered our lives. She saw a lonely widow, a simple mother-in-law who wore the same burgundy cardigan to family gatherings, who cooked a pot roast for Christmas instead of ordering catering, who took an Uber instead of driving a brand new car. What she didn't see was the woman who built a fortune alone, the accountant who managed millions of corporate dollars for decades, the mother who sacrificed everything for her son. She didn't see my investments, my bank account, my properties, my intelligence. She saw me as a chicken she could pluck, feather by feather, and I let her. For 3 years, I let her. Why? Because I loved my son. Because I thought if I helped them, they would be happy. And if they were happy, I would be too. How wrong I was. But I have something Harper never expected. Something that has saved me and sunk her at key moments in my life. A notebook. A burgundy notebook with leather covers I bought at a stationery store 20 years ago. In it, Arthur and I used to write down our expenses, our dreams, our plans. After his death, I kept using it. I write down everything: dates, names, amounts, important conversations, promises made to me. I'm not scatterbrained. I'm observant. And in that notebook was every dollar I had lent to my son and his wife. Every promise of payment they never kept. Every humiliation I swallowed in silence. $75,000. $75,000 that went from my hands to theirs in 3 years. And that night at the restaurant, as their faces went pale, I knew the time had come to open that notebook in front of everyone. But first, I needed them to understand how we got there. I needed them to remember who I really was. Do you want to know how a manipulative daughter-in-law can destroy a family in 3 years? Stay tuned, because what comes next will outrage you to your core. I met Harper 5 years ago at a dinner Liam organized at an Italian restaurant in the West Village. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," he told me over the phone that afternoon. His voice sounded excited, youthful. I hadn't heard him like that in years. I arrived with a bouquet of white flowers, thinking it would be something intimate. But when I walked into the restaurant, there was a large table. There were Harper's parents, her sister Chloe, and 3 other relatives they introduced so quickly I forgot their names instantly. Harper stood up with a radiant smile. She was wearing an ivory dress and sky-high heels that made her look imposing. "Mom!" she exclaimed, hugging me tight, even though we had just met. "Liam has told me so much about you. You're his hero." I liked it. I can't lie. I liked hearing that. Her mother, Barbara, extended a hand coldly. She was wearing a pearl necklace that I would later discover was fake and perfume so strong it made my nose itch. "A pleasure," she said without really smiling. The dinner was strange. They ordered expensive wine, carpaccio appetizers, truffle pasta. When the time came to pay, there was an uncomfortable silence. Everyone looked at their plates. Liam looked at me with those eyes I knew so well, those eyes of a little boy asking for help. "Mom, could you?" I paid. $480. I didn't say anything. It was the first dinner with my future daughter-in-law's family. I wanted to make a good impression. That was my first mistake. The following months were a tornado of emotions. Liam was in love. Harper came to my house every week, always with a little something. A cake from an expensive bakery, flowers, once even a knitted shawl she said her grandmother had made. "I want us to be like mother and daughter," she told me while we drank coffee in my kitchen. I didn't have daughters. I always wanted one. Maybe that's why I opened my heart so fast. But the signs started, little things that seemed innocent at first. "Oh, Mom, you're so old-fashioned with that pressure cooker. You should buy one of the new electric ones. They're much safer. This sofa is getting really old, isn't it? At my house, we have modern ones that look incredible. Are you still using that phone? Oh my God, it doesn't even have a decent camera." Comments wrapped in laughter, but comments nonetheless. 6 months later, they announced the engagement. And then the wedding nightmare began. Harper wanted to get married at the Plaza, one of the most exclusive venues in the city. The full package cost $40,000. "It's been my dream since I was a little girl, Mom," she told me with shining eyes. "But Dad is going through financial trouble right now. He can't help us much." I looked at Liam. He had just finished his residency. He was starting to work at a private hospital, but his salary was still low. "We can do something simpler," I suggested. "A beautiful wedding, but more accessible." Harper looked at me as if I had suggested getting married in a barn. "It's your only son, isn't it? Your only chance to see him get married. Don't you want it to be special?" There it was, the guilt, the first hook. I ended up paying $30,000 for the event. They told me it was a temporary loan, that they would pay me back as soon as they were settled. The wedding was beautiful. I can't deny it. Flowers everywhere. A 5-course banquet. Live music. Harper looked like a princess. Liam couldn't stop smiling. I smiled too. But inside I felt an emptiness I couldn't explain. 2 months later came the honeymoon. "Greece, Mom," Liam told me over the phone. "We've always wanted to see Greece. But with the wedding, we spent everything. It's the trip of our dreams," Harper added on speakerphone. "We'll pay you back in 6 months, I promise. Maximum 6 months. Another $10,000. I never saw a single dime back. Promises became excuses. Excuses became silence, and the comments became sharper. In my family, things are done differently, Mom. My mom would never do that. How weird that someone of your generation thinks like that. She started calling me scatterbrained Eleanor in front of her friends, like it was an affectionate nickname. But the tone always had a hint of mockery. Liam would laugh, uncomfortably at first, then naturally, as if it were okay to make fun of his mother. That was the moment I should have stopped it all. But I didn't. Because I loved my son. And because I thought things would improve with time. They didn't improve. They got worse. Much worse. The worst hadn't happened yet. Because when they decided to move into my house, just for 2 months, my life turned into a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. My house isn't just a property. It's the result of 40 years of sacrifice, every brick paid for with overtime, every window bought after rejecting a new dress, every plant in the garden planted with my own hands on Sundays when others rested. 3 stories. Terracotta facade, a carved wooden door that Arthur and I chose together one rainy Saturday. A garden with 3 wisteria vines we planted when Liam was a baby. Now they are almost 30 years old, and in spring, they fill everything with purple flowers. The first floor. Spacious living room with large windows. Dining room for 8 people. A kitchen with a granite countertop I installed 10 years ago. A pantry full of spices I've collected. A corner with my rosemary, basil, and mint plants. The second floor. 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom was the one I shared with Arthur. I turned it into my sanctuary after his death. Liam's room, which I kept intact years after he moved out, and a guest room with its own bathroom. The third floor. My study. My sacred place. A cedar desk where I keep the accounts for my rentals. Bookshelves full of novels and accounting manuals. A huge window with a view of the park. That's where I spend my afternoons drinking chamomile tea, reading, watching the sunset, and my most precious treasure, my grandmother Rose's German wall clock. Dark wood with bronze inlays. A pendulum that marks the seconds with a tick-tock that lulled me to sleep as a child. It's worth $8,000, according to an appraiser who evaluated it 3 years ago. But to me, it's priceless. It's the only thing I have left of my grandmother, the woman who taught me that a woman without her own money is a woman without a voice. 3 years ago, one September afternoon, Liam arrived without warning. He was carrying 2 large suitcases. "Mom, we have a problem," he said, leaving them in the entryway. "The apartment we were renting has mold in the walls. They're fumigating. Can we stay here for 2 months? Maximum 2 months. Harper entered behind him carrying 3 boxes. She didn't even wait for my answer. "Oh, Mom, you're saving our lives," she said, kissing my cheek. 2 months and we're gone, I promise." 2 months turned into 14. 14 months of losing my house little by little. The first week was tolerable. They settled on the 2nd floor, in the guest room. I was still in the master. The 3rd floor was still mine, but Harper had plans. "Mom, this dining room is very dark. Would you mind if I put up some lighter curtains?" She didn't wait for an answer. 3 days later, there were beige curtains I didn't choose on my windows. "This living room needs modernizing. How about we move this furniture?" The sofa Arthur and I bought when we got married ended up in the storage room. A minimalist gray sofa she bought on sale took its place. "Oh, this tablecloth is stained, Mom." It was the tablecloth embroidered by my mother, hand-stitched colorful flowers, 50 years old, a piece of family history. "It looked really old, Mom. I had to throw it away. Hope you don't mind." She said it while eating cereal in my kitchen. I froze. The words got stuck in my throat. "No, it doesn't matter," I lied. Liam didn't even look up from his cell phone. Things started to disappear. The porcelain dinnerware we used at Christmas. A piece broke. "Mom," so I donated the rest. What good is an incomplete set? My parents' portraits that hung in the hallway. They made the space look sad. I put them in a box in the basement. I looked for that box for weeks. I never found it. And one day, while cleaning, I found something that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. In the kitchen trash can, among eggshells and coffee grounds, was Arthur's engagement ring, the one he gave me on that bench in Prospect Park. The one I wore for 30 years until my fingers swelled and it didn't fit anymore. The one I kept in a velvet box on my nightstand. I pulled it out, trembling. It had napkin scraps stuck to it. "Oh, sorry, Mom," Harper said when I asked her. "I was cleaning your nightstand and thought it was cheap costume jewelry. You know, so opaque, so old. Sorry. Was it important?" She looked at me with those green eyes without a shred of remorse. "Do you want me to look for it in the trash?" "I already took it out," I said with a thread of a voice. "Oh, good. You should send it to get cleaned. It looks horrible." That night I cried, hugging that ring for hours. But the worst was yet to come. Because Harper wasn't just invading my house, she was inviting her family to live in it. Her sister Chloe started coming just for the weekend. 3 weekends later, she had clothes in the closet of Liam's old room. Her mother Barbara came to visit us and stayed 4-5 days. She used my kitchen, my living room, my television. She left her heels lying in the entryway. "It's just that my mom feels lonely," Harper explained. "Aren't you happy to have company, Mom?" My house didn't smell like rosemary and coffee like before. It smelled like Barbara's cheap perfume, like Chloe's hair gel, like food I didn't cook. My sanctuary had turned into a free hotel for a family that saw me as the maid, and I still didn't say anything. Because every time I tried to speak, Liam would say, "Mom, it's just a couple more months. Don't exaggerate." A couple of months turned into a year, and then came my 68th birthday, the day something inside me finally broke. I thought that day my family would celebrate me. I was wrong. That day I learned that to them, I wasn't the matriarch. I was the servant. If I ask you how much trust is worth, what would you answer? I can tell you exactly how much it cost me to lose it. $75,000. $75,000 that left my accounts in 36 months. Money I lent with promises of repayment that never arrived. Let me tell you how a loving mother turns into an ATM. It all started 6 months after the wedding. Liam arrived one afternoon with a worried look. He sat in my living room, on the sofa Harper had replaced, and sighed deeply. "Mom, I need to ask you a huge favor." Harper was next to him with her hands clasped on her lap. That good girl pose she also mastered. "The hospital offered me the chance to buy into my own practice," Liam continued. "It's a unique opportunity, but I need a down payment of $20,000 for the car we need. Without my own car, I can't do home visits. We'll pay you back in a year, Mom," Harper added, "with interest if you want. It's an investment in your son's future." I looked at Liam. My savings were for emergencies, for my old age, but he was my son, my only family. I transferred the $20,000 the next day. "I'll pay you back in a year, Mom." Word. He never paid it. 3 months later, it was Harper's business. "Mom, I'm going to open an online clothing store," she explained enthusiastically. "Exclusive designs. I already have suppliers. I just need seed capital for inventory." "How much?" I asked cautiously. $25,000. "I know it's a lot, but in 6 months you recover the investment. I'll give you 20% of the profits." Liam looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, it's Harper's dream, and it could be very profitable." I made the transfer. I signed a paper Harper wrote by hand where she promised to pay me back in 8 months. The store never existed. When I asked about it 2 months later, Harper shrugged. "The market was too competitive, Mom. I had to close. But don't worry, I'll pay you as soon as I can." She couldn't. Then came Harper's medical emergency. "I have a problem with my nose, Mom," she told me one Tuesday morning. "The doctor says I need surgery. It's for my health. I can't breathe well at night. $9,000 for rhinoplasty. A completely cosmetic surgery she called a medical necessity. I'll pay you back in 4 months, Mom. It's my health. Do you understand?" She didn't pay me. Afterward, it was the trip to Cabo. A family trip to strengthen bonds, they said. I wasn't invited, but my money was. $7,000. Credit card debts they couldn't pay. $14,000. Every time the same story, the same promise, the same silence afterwards. I wrote everything down in my burgundy notebook. Date, amount, promise of payment, signature when I could get it, page after page, number after number. And every time I asked for the money, the answer was the same. "Next month, Mom." "Things are tough right now, Mom. You're already collecting? How ugly." Valeria said that last phrase in front of Chloe. The two of them laughed. She's his mother. She has to help him. That's what mothers are for, right? But what hurt me the most weren't the debts. It was seeing them walk out of the mall at Short Hills one Saturday afternoon. I was arriving from doing some basic shopping at the market. I had my grocery bags, my vegetables, my fruit, and I saw them walk out with Louis Vuitton bags. 5 large bags. They were laughing. Liam was carrying 2. Harper had a new purse hanging from her arm. Chloe accompanied them with 3 other bags. They saw me. I know they saw me. Harper looked me straight in the eye. She smiled. Mom, what a coincidence. There was an incredible sale. Jealous? She said, laughing. I stood at the entrance of the parking lot watching them get into their car, the car I had helped buy. Luxury bags bought with my money while I was still using the same brown leather handbag from 20 years ago. That night I checked my notebook. I calculated, added, subtracted, projected. If it continued like this, in 5 years I would have lost my entire savings, my investments, my safety net. Everything I had built alone would end up in the hands of 2 people who saw me as an infinite resource, not as a mother, not as a person with needs, as a source of cash. And then I made a decision. If they could keep secrets, so could I. If they could lie, I could investigate. If they played dirty, I would learn the rules. That night I didn't sleep. The next day I hired a private investigator. His name was Rick, 42 years old, ex-NYPD, discreet, professional. I need to know where my money is, I told him in his office. I need to know what they spend it on. I need proof. It cost me $2,000. It was the best investment of my life. In 2 weeks, Rick brought me information that shattered my heart, but it also gave me the perfect weapon for my revenge. On March 15th, I turned 68. 68 years of life, of work, of sacrifices, of lifting my family with my own hands. I thought that day would be special. How naive I was. Mom, let's have a dinner at your house, Liam told me a week before. Something intimate, family only. Let's celebrate together. It will be beautiful, Mom, added Harper with that smile that no longer fooled me. I'll help with everything. Just relax and enjoy. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up early. The sun was coming through my bedroom window. Outside, the wisteria was beginning to bloom. I went down to the kitchen expecting. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a cake? Coffee made? A hug? The kitchen was empty. Liam and Harper were sleeping on the 2nd floor. I heard their alarms go off and get snoozed several times. I made my own coffee. I ate a sweet roll alone in the dining room. No message. No call. No happy birthday until 11 in the morning, when Harper came down yawning. Oh, right. Happy birthday, Mom, she said distractedly while checking her phone. At 2 in the afternoon, Harper called me to the kitchen. Mom, dinner will be here at 7. I invited my family. Just about 18 people. Nothing crazy. 18 people? Harper, I thought it would be something small. Oh, Mom, don't be like that. The more people, the more joy. Besides, your pot roast is famous. It would be an insult to bring food from outside, right? She looked at me expecting me to say, yes. You have all the ingredients, right? Because I don't have time to go to the market. I didn't have all the ingredients. At 3 in the afternoon, I was at the gourmet market buying beef, carrots, potatoes, herbs, wine, everything needed to make a roast dinner for 20 people. $450 I spent out of my own pocket. I returned home carrying bags. No one helped me carry them up. And I started cooking. I seared the meat, chopped the vegetables, mashed the potatoes, prepared the gravy, baked dinner rolls, made 3 types of dessert because my family loves sweets, according to Harper. I was on my feet for 8 hours. My feet swelled, my back burned, my hands smelled like onions and thyme. At 7, the guests started arriving. Harper's entire family. Her mother Barbara with her suffocating perfume, her sister Chloe with her boyfriend, aunts, cousins, friends, people I didn't know filling my living room. No one brought me a gift. No one brought me flowers. Oh, it smells so good, they shouted, walking in. I served the food. 23 plates I filled. I took them to the table. I arranged silverware. I brought more bread. I poured more water. I collected dirty plates. I turned into the maid at my own party, on my own birthday, in my own house. Harper sat at the head of my table. She toasted with wine I bought. To family, she said, raising her glass. To being together. Everyone applauded. No one toasted to me. They ate until they were stuffed. They laughed. They took photos. Liam posted stories on Instagram. Perfect family dinner, he wrote. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. At 11 at night, when everyone left, Chloe passed by me in the hallway. She was talking on the phone. How useful to have a mother-in-law like that. She was telling someone between laughs, like a free maid. My sister is so lucky. She realized I was there. She looked at me. She smiled and kept walking. I went up to my room at midnight. No one sang happy birthday to me. No one gave me a birthday hug. No one said thank you for the food, Mom. I sat on my bed. I took the burgundy notebook out of my nightstand drawer, and I wrote with a trembling hand. March 15th, my 68th birthday, the day I stopped being a mother and became a servant. The day I decided this ends. I cried until 4 a.m, hugging my pillow. But through the tears, something new was born. Rage, determination, strength. The next day, I called Rick, the detective. I need everything, I told him. Bank statements, photographs, messages. Everything you can get. Are you sure, Mrs. Vance? He asked me. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. My transformation had begun, but they had no idea. What the detective revealed to me 3 weeks later was worse than I imagined, and it gave me exactly what I needed to destroy their lies. 3 days after my birthday, I opened my burgundy notebook on the cedar desk in my third-floor study. The view of the park stretched out in front of me. It was a gray March afternoon. The wisteria swayed in the wind. I turned the pages one by one. 36 months of my life summarized in numbers and dates. Every loan, every broken promise, every humiliation swallowed in silence. $20,000. Down payment for the car. I'll pay you back in a year, Mom. Date: June 15th, 2022. Payments received: 0. $25,000. Investment in Harper's online store. You recover everything in 8 months with profit. Date: September 20th, 2022. Business that never existed. $9,000. Harper's medical surgery. Date: January 8th, 2023. Rhinoplasty, completely cosmetic. Page after page, lie after lie. $75,000 in total. But I knew the money was just the tip of the iceberg. I started my own investigation. 3 nights later, while they slept, I went down to the second floor. The door to their room was ajar. I heard Liam snoring. I entered with silent steps into the room that used to be for guests, and they now called their space. On the desk were papers, invoices, bank statements. I photographed them all with my cell phone. My hands were shaking so much, some photos came out blurry. I had to retake them. And then I saw something that froze my blood. A bank statement. Joint account of Liam and Harper. Balance: $340,000. $340,000 saved, while they told me they couldn't pay me. While they asked me for more money for emergencies. While I ate beans to save and they bought Louis Vuitton. They had $340,000 in the bank. I took photos of everything. Of the complete statement. Of the dates. Of the transactions. I found more things. Receipts from expensive restaurants. $1,200 for a single dinner at Le Bernardin. Spa receipts. $850 in massages and facials. Plane tickets to Cabo. $3,500. That weekend they told me they were visiting a sick friend. I photographed everything, but I knew I needed more. I needed professional proof. Proof that would withstand any excuse. The next day I called Rick. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He arrived with a black portfolio. It will cost you $2,000. He told me straight. But I will get everything you need. Bank statements, purchase history, movement tracking, photographs, everything legal. Do it, I said without hesitation. I paid right there. In cash. Rick worked fast. In 2 weeks he summoned me to his office. It was a small space in Midtown. Gray walls, a desk, 2 chairs. He put a folder in front of me. Mrs. Vance, what I am about to show you won't be easy to see. He opened the folder. First photograph. Liam and Harper walking into a BMW dealership. Date, 3 months ago. They were getting a quote for a new car, Rick explained. Model X3, $60,000. Second photograph. Harper in a jewelry store on 5th Avenue. She was leaving with a Tiffany bag. She bought a silver bracelet, $2,000. Third photograph. The two of them at a restaurant in the village. Table full of wine bottles. Date, 4 days after my birthday. That dinner cost $900, Rick said. I kept flipping through photographs. Each one was a stab wound. Trips, clothes, restaurants, luxuries paid for with the money they told me they didn't have. But the worst came later. Rick took out his laptop. He opened a folder of screenshots. These are WhatsApp messages, recovered from a phone they left unlocked at a cafe. I started reading. Group name, Harper's fam, Chloe. Ha ha. No way. The old lady made us pot roast for 20 people today. Harper. I know. She was the maid all day. Harper's mother. How useful. Your lucky daughter. Harper. She's the perfect cash cow. Never says no. Chloe. ATM with legs. Ha ha ha. Harper. I almost convinced Liam to sign the house over to his name for tax purposes. They say it works out better that way. I ran out of air. Keep reading, Rick said with a soft voice. Liam. In another group called The Boys. My mom is so easy to manipulate. I just make sad faces and she coughs up the cash. Friend 1. Ha ha ha. Wow, that's messed up but efficient. Liam. The bad thing is she's starting to ask about the money. She's getting annoying. The letters blurred in front of my eyes. My son. My only son. The one I raised alone. The one I defended from everything and everyone. He spoke of me as if I were an idiot they milked for fun. There's more, Rick said. He took out another document. A printed sheet. I found this in their car. They left it on the seat. It was a document handwritten by Harper. A list. Plan Connecticut house. Convince Ellie to donate the house for tax issues. 2. Tell her that way Liam doesn't pay inheritance tax. Do paperwork with lawyer friend. 4. Once in Liam's name, convince him to sell. Value $1.8 million according to Feb appraisal. 6. Use money for new condo. $800K. New car. $100K. Chloe's business. $50K. Rest for us. They already had everything planned. My house. The house I built brick by brick. The house where the wisteria Arthur and I planted grew. The house where I raised my son. They wanted to take it from me. Mrs. Vance, Rick said, I have enough evidence for a lawsuit, or to confront them however you decide. I closed the folder slowly. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear. Rick, I said, looking him in the eye, I need you to help me with one more thing. What do you need? I smiled. For the first time in 3 years, I smiled with true satisfaction. I need to plan the most memorable family reunion of their lives. The Imperial Garden restaurant will be the perfect setting, because sometimes justice is served cold, at a table where they thought I would pay the bill one more time. Mark Anthony was 35 years old when his mother Mary and I worked together at Miller & Associates. Mary was my cubicle mate for 15 years. A brilliant woman who died of a stroke 4 years ago. Before dying, she asked me to look after her son. He's a good boy, Ellie, but sometimes he needs advice from someone with experience. Mark became manager of the Imperial Garden 3 years ago. An elegant place, white tablecloths, fine crystal, high prices. I called him a week after seeing the evidence Rick gave me. We met at the restaurant on a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. Dead hours, empty tables. Mrs. Vance, he greeted me with a sincere hug. So good to see you. How have you been? Mark, I need to tell you something, and I need your help. We sat at a back table, ordered coffee, and I told him everything. Every dollar lent, every broken promise, every humiliation, the messages, the mockery, the plan to steal my house. Mark listened in silence. His face hardened with every word. That is abuse, he said when I finished. Financial and emotional abuse. I know, I replied, and I'm going to stop it. but I need your help to do it the right way. Whatever you need, Mrs. Vance. My mother loved you like a sister. I respect you the same." I explained my plan. Mark smiled. It was a small but satisfied smile. "I like it," he said. "I like it a lot." 3 days later, Harper called me. "Mom, are you free next Saturday?" "What for?" I asked with the most neutral voice I could muster. "We want to invite you to dinner, to celebrate our anniversary. It will be at the Imperial Garden, that elegant restaurant downtown. Is 8:30 okay with you?" Anniversary. She didn't even specify of what. Later I would discover the truth. "Sounds perfect," I said. "Oh, great. See you there then. Don't be late, okay? You know how scatterbrained you get." She hung up laughing. Immediately I dialed Mark. "They just confirmed," I told him. "Perfect. Leave it to me." The next day, Harper made her reservation. Mark sent me a screenshot. Reservation for 9 people. 6 p.m. Name, Harper Smith. 6 in the evening. They told me 8:30. 2.5 hours later. Just as we suspected. The plan was simple, but devastating. They would dine peacefully, order the most expensive things, enjoy, and I would arrive just when they finished, just to pay the bill. But this time would be different, because Mark and I had our own surprise prepared. On Saturday, I got ready with special care: my burgundy cardigan, black slacks, the brown leather handbag Arthur gave me, comfortable shoes. I brushed my hair back, a little pale pink lipstick. I looked in the mirror before leaving. "Arthur," I whispered, "I hope you're proud of me." I felt his presence, like always when I need him most. I arrived at the restaurant exactly at 8:30 p.m. On time, just as I have always been. The air conditioning hit my face, the smell of butter and garlic, the dim lights, the murmur of elegant conversations, and in the back, the large table. 9 people: Harper, Liam, Chloe, Barbara, Harper's cousin, her aunt, 3 more I didn't recognize. The table was destroyed. Empty plates with lobster remains, stained wine glasses, crumpled napkins, empty bottles of Moet. They saw me arrive. Harper smiled. That smile. "Oh, you're late." The words that would start everything. The waiter brought me the check. $875. Everyone expected me to take out my wallet, like always. But this time I didn't. This time I raised my hand and called Mark. He approached immediately, impeccable in his black suit and burgundy tie. "Mrs. Vance," he said with a professional yet warm voice. "Good evening." I saw the confused looks at the table. "Mark," I said clearly. "What time was the reservation made for this table?" "At 6 o'clock sharp, ma'am." "And what time was I told to be here?" "According to my understanding, 8:30 p.m. The silence that fell over the table was heavy. Harper tried to laugh. "Oh, Mom, it was a misunderstanding." But Mark continued. "Mrs. Vance, your permanent VIP table has been ready since 6 this evening. We were expecting you." Harper stopped smiling. "Permanent table?" she asked with a weak voice. Mark looked at me. I nodded. "Of course," he said, addressing everyone at the table. "Mrs. Vance is a partner in this restaurant. She holds 15% of the shares since 10 years ago. She invested $100,000 in our project when we were just starting. The faces at that table: Harper, white as a sheet; Liam, mouth open, eyes wide; Chloe, looking at her sister seeking explanations; Barbara, her fake pearl necklace shining under the lights as she swallowed hard. Furthermore," Mark continued, "Mrs. Vance has a preferred account. She never pays in cash. Everything goes to her partner account with a 30% discount." No one spoke. The restaurant continued its normal rhythm around us. Waiters serving, couples dining, soft piano music. But at our table, a bomb had dropped. I sat in the remaining empty chair. Slowly, calmly, I placed my handbag on the table. I took out my burgundy notebook, and finally I said the words I had been keeping for 3 years. "I am not paying this bill." And then I took out that notebook, the one that contained every lie, every stolen dollar, every broken promise. It was time for everyone to know who I really was. I opened my burgundy notebook on the white tablecloth. The sound of the pages turning was the only thing heard for 3 eternal seconds. Everyone was looking at me, some with fear, others with confusion. Harper with barely disguised hatred. $875, I said, pointing to the bill the waiter had left. Moet champagne, lobster, premium goat cheese, and fig appetizers, raspberry soufflés with Belgian chocolate. Very generous. With my money, my voice didn't shake. For the first time in 3 years, it didn't shake. "Ma'am," started Barbara with her shrill voice. I raised my hand. She fell silent. "You are going to listen to me," I said firmly, "because you have been talking for 3 years. Now it's my turn." I turned the first page of the notebook. June 15th, 2022. $20,000 transferred for car down payment. Promise of payment, 1 year. Payments received to date, 0. Liam opened his mouth. I stopped him with a look. A single look. Like when he was 6 years old and throwing a tantrum. He stayed quiet. September 20th, 2022. $25,000 for investment in Harper's online store. Promise of recovery. 8 months with profit. The store never existed. Harper tried to interrupt. "I can explain." "No," I said with a voice of steel. "There is no explanation. There are lies. And I have proof of every single one." I took out my phone. I opened the folder of photographs Rick had sent me. "This is the store that failed," I said, showing the screen. "Except there was never a tax registration. There were never suppliers. There was never anything." I scrolled through more photos. "These are your bank statements. Joint account, current balance, $340,000. Liam turned red. "Mom, that's private?" I finished for him. "You made my private life your public business. Now it's my turn." I continued reading the notebook. Every line, every date, every dollar. The cosmetic surgery, disguised as a medical emergency. The trip to Cabo, where I wasn't invited. The credit card debts they couldn't pay while buying luxuries. $75,000 in 36 months. "But the money is just one part," I said, closing the notebook. I took out the printed screenshots. I placed them on the table one by one, as if they were poker cards. "Cash cow," I read aloud. "ATM with legs. The old servant. Easy to manipulate." I saw Chloe sink into her chair. "These are your messages, your conversations, your mockery." I read each one, with a clear voice, without rushing. The restaurant kept its rhythm, but I felt discreet glances from other tables. Mark stayed close, professional, but watchful. I reached the message that hurt me the most. "My mom is so easy to manipulate. I just make sad faces and she coughs up the cash." I looked Liam straight in the eye. "Is that how you see me? As someone easy to manipulate?" He couldn't hold my gaze. "Mom, You wrote that message, Liam. Your number, your writing style, your profile picture." Tears started running down his face, but they weren't of regret. They were of shame for being caught. I took out the last document. Harper's written plan to steal my house. I read it entirely. Every point, every step they had planned to take. $1.8 million, I said at the end. "That is the value of my house. The house I bought with 40 years of work. You had already planned how to spend it." Harper finally exploded. "But we're family!" she screamed. "Families help each other. It's your obligation as a mother." I stared at her. "Family doesn't steal," I said in a low voice that cut like a razor. "Family doesn't humiliate. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't make plans to strip a 6-8-year-old woman of everything she built." I stood up slowly. "I am not paying this bill. You have $340,000 saved with my money. Use it." "We can't," Harper said. "That money is for the down payment on our house." "The house you plan to buy with the money from selling mine?" I asked. Silence. "You have 2 options," I continued. 1. You pay this bill with your money, your card, your savings, and you have 48 hours to get out of my house with all your things and all your family. "And the other option?" Liam asked with a trembling voice. "There is no other option," I said firmly. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a manila envelope. "These are legal documents. My lawyer prepared them yesterday. It is a lawsuit for the $75,000 plus interest. If you want to avoid going to court, you have 2 weeks to reach a payment agreement. I placed the envelope on top of the bill for $875. And regarding this dinner, I looked at Mark. He nodded. The restaurant will process your cards, Mark said with a professional voice. If you do not have sufficient funds, I can split the bill among everyone present. I saw the panic in Harper's eyes. The aunt I didn't know started looking for her purse. Barbara looked at her daughter with fury. You got us into this? She whispered with rage. I turned to leave. Mom, wait! Liam stood up. Please, we can talk. I stopped. I turned around. I looked at him with a broken heart but with dignity intact. For 3 years I talked, asked, begged, trusted. Now there is nothing left to talk about. You won't even give me a chance? I gave you 100 chances, Liam. You chose to waste them all. Harper stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're a bitter old woman who can't accept that your son has his own family now. I laughed. A short laugh. Bitter. My son had a family, I said. He had a mother who loved him, who sacrificed everything for him. But he traded that family for a woman who uses him and is going to destroy him. I looked at Harper directly. And you, I said, pointing at her, you thought I was a dumb old woman, easy to manipulate, a cash cow. But what you didn't understand is that women of my generation didn't get here by being dumb. We got here by being strong, intelligent, and patient. I stepped closer to her. We were face to face. I built a fortune alone. I raised a son alone. I paid debts that would have sunk anyone. And you? You only know how to take what others build. Harper was shaking with rage. This isn't going to stay like this, she threatened. You're right, I said. It won't stay like this, because I am going to recover every dollar you stole from me, and I'm going to make sure the whole world knows who you really are. I took my handbag, my notebook, my dignity, and walked out of the restaurant with my head held high. Behind me, I heard shouting, arguments, the sound of chairs moving. Mark caught up with me at the door. Mrs. Vance, he said with a small smile. That was impressive. Thanks for your help, Mark. I processed their cards. They had to split the bill among 4 people. None had enough funds to pay a loan. I smiled. Outside, the fresh night air filled my lungs. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed fully. The battle had just begun, but I had already won the war. I thought that with the confrontation everything would end. I had no idea that the worst and the best were still to come. Today is September 16th. It has been exactly 6 months since that night at the Imperial Garden. I am sitting on the terrace of my house. The 3rd floor. My study. My recovered sanctuary. The wisteria in the garden is in full bloom. Purple. Beautiful. Exactly as Arthur planted them 30 years ago. Next to me, in her fluffy bed, is Luna, my 2-year-old golden retriever. I adopted her 3 months after the confrontation. She looks at me with those brown eyes full of unconditional love. The love a family should give. In my hand, I have a cup of chamomile tea. In the other, my phone. I just received a notification. The last transfer of the payment agreement. Let me tell you what happened in these 6 months. The night of the confrontation, I arrived home at 11. The house was dark, silent. Mine again. The next day, Liam and Harper arrived with a moving truck. We didn't speak. They packed their things in silence. Harper was crying dramatically. Liam avoided my gaze. Mom, please, he said when they loaded the last box. This is a mistake. We can fix it. There is nothing left to fix, I replied from the door of my house. You have my lawyer's number. Everything will be handled legally from now on. Just like that? You throw away your only family? You undid this family 3 years ago, Liam. I am just recognizing what no longer exists. They left. The truck started up. And for the first time in 14 months, my house returned to being just mine. That night, I walked through every room. I turned on lights, opened windows, let the fresh air enter, and clean everything. On the 2nd floor, the bedroom they occupied was empty, painted white, ready to do whatever I wanted. I decided to turn it into a sewing room. I always wanted to learn to sew well. The next day, I hired my lawyer, Patricia Miller, a 52-year-old woman. Serious, professional, ruthless. Mrs. Vance, with the evidence you have, we can sue for fraud, financial abuse, and emotional distress, she explained in her office. How long would a trial take? 2 years, maybe 3. 2 years fighting in courts. 2 years seeing my son in hearings. 2 years of my life dedicated to this. And if we offer a settlement? I asked. We could recover a significant portion. It would depend on their willingness to negotiate. We gave them 2 weeks to respond. 10 days later, Liam called Patricia. They agreed to negotiate. We met at Patricia's office. Neutral, professional. Liam arrived alone. Harper didn't come. She is very emotionally affected, he said. More like she was hiding. My client demands $50,000. Patricia started. It is less than what is owed, but considering time and legal costs, it is a reasonable amount. We don't have that money, said Liam. You have $340,000 in savings, I replied, and you can sell the car I helped buy. He stayed silent. Besides, I continued, you can ask for a loan, like I had to do when your father died and I was left with debts from his treatment. He signed the agreement. Payments of $2,000. My daughter-in-law and her family had already finished their anniversary dinner when I arrived. She smiled and said, "Oh, you're late. You're getting the check, right?" "Haha," my son laughed. "You're as scatterbrained as ever. How did you manage to be late?" That was the moment I realized they had invited me for exactly the time the dinner was ending. I called the manager over, and suddenly, their faces went pale. The air conditioning of the Imperial Garden restaurant hit my face as I walked through the glass doors. It was exactly 8:30 p.m. I was on time, just as I have been for all 68 years of my life. I was carrying my brown leather handbag, the one Arthur gave me 20 years ago, and a burgundy cardigan that made me feel elegant without being flashy. I saw the table in the back, huge, full of people, and completely empty of food. Only dirty plates, half-finished glasses of wine, crumpled napkins. The smell of butter and garlic still lingered in the air, mocking me. My daughter-in-law, Harper, was the first to spot me. She was wearing a tight black dress, her hair freshly styled in perfect waves. She looked at me with those green eyes that I once thought were pretty and smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just won something. "Oh, you're late," she said with a light, almost musical laugh. "You're getting the check, right?" "Haha." Her sister, Chloe, let out a loud cackle. My son, Liam, my only child, the one I raised alone after cancer took his father, didn't even get up to greet me. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, looking at me like I was an inconvenience. "You're as scatterbrained as ever, Mom," he said in that tone he had learned from Harper. That tone that mixed mockery with pity. "How did you manage to be late?" The words hit my stomach like rocks. I pulled out my cell phone. I checked Harper's text message. There it was. "Hey Mom, anniversary dinner, 8:30 p.m. at the Imperial Garden. Don't miss it." I looked at the restaurant's wall clock. The hands showed 8:32 p.m. I wasn't late. I had arrived exactly when they told me to. And then I understood it, like a lightning bolt illuminating everything in the dark. They had invited me on purpose for when the dinner was over, so I would pay the bill for a meal I never shared. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. Everyone was at the table. Harper, Chloe, Harper's mother Barbara with her fake pearl necklace, Harper's cousin, her aunt, and 3 other people I didn't even know. 9 people in total, all laughing, all looking at me like I was the punchline of the night. The waiter approached with a tray. On top was a bill folded inside a small black leather booklet. "The check, ma'am," he said in a professional voice. I opened it. My hands were trembling slightly. $875. $875 for a dinner I didn't eat. Moet champagne, lobster, goat cheese and fig appetizers, raspberry soufflés. Everything was the most expensive item on the menu. Harper was watching me with that smile. Liam avoided my eyes. The others waited. Something inside me, something that had been asleep for 3 years, began to wake up. I closed the bill. I took a deep breath, and instead of taking out my wallet as I would have done before, as I had done dozens of times, I raised my hand and signaled the manager. "Mark Anthony," I said with a firm voice. "Could you come over for a moment?" I saw Harper's smile waver. just for a second, but I saw it. Mark Anthony approached in his impeccable suit and that burgundy tie he always wore. He's the son of Mary, my old co-worker from the accounting firm, a serious, professional man, and someone I trusted absolutely. Mrs. Vance, he said, bowing his head with genuine respect. Good evening. Mark, what time was the reservation made for this table? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. He didn't hesitate for a second. At 6 o'clock sharp, ma'am. They arrived promptly at that time. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Harper stopped smiling. Liam straightened up in his chair. Chloe looked at her sister with wide eyes. And what time was I told to be here? I asked loudly, so everyone could hear. At 8:30 p.m., as I understand it, Mark replied. Exactly, I said. My voice sounded stronger than it had in years. Then Mark added something I knew he would say, something we had planned a week ago when I told him my situation. Mrs. Vance, your permanent VIP table has been ready since 6. We were expecting you. I watched the color drain from Harper's face. Permanent table? She stammered. Of course, Mark said with total naturalness. Mrs. Vance is a silent partner in this restaurant. She has held 15% of the shares for 10 years. And right there, in that moment, as their faces turned as pale as wax, I knew everything was about to change. But what they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. If you want to know how I got to that moment, how I went from being the scatterbrained mother-in-law to the woman who taught them the hardest lesson of their lives, subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Because they never saw what was coming, let me tell you who I really am. Because for 3 years, I let myself be called scatterbrained Eleanor, the old-fashioned mother-in-law, the generous little old lady. But that was never me. My name is Eleanor Grace Vance. I am 68 years old, and every wrinkle on my face tells a story of work, struggle, and victories that no one handed to me. When I was 25, Arthur and I got married in a small chapel in Brooklyn. He was a civil engineer. I had just finished my degree as a certified public accountant. We moved into a 2-room apartment that we paid for together, with furniture we bought second-hand at flea markets. Liam was born 2 years later. It was the best day of my life. I worked through my entire pregnancy. I went back to the office when he was 3 months old, not because I wanted to,